All right, Alex and Emily, thank you so much for joining me. I'm very excited for this topic, and I'm excited that you all are joining me for this risk rundown episode. We are going to be talking about the next gen today. And honestly, the reason I like it is because it really depends on who you're speaking with and depends on what perspective you get, right? So if you speak with my parents, I'm their next generation. Emily, you're my next generation. So if you're speaking to me, Alex, I'm not even going to answer for you. You can answer on your
Oh,
own.
stop. You're
But
both my next generation.
I know. But I do love it because not only are we talking about the insurance consultant and advisor being the next generation, but really who our clients are and the high net worth space, right? And how they like to communicate and what's important to them and the differences in how they perceive insurance and how they perceive risk. So, Emily, I'm going to start with you because I would love to know if you consider yourself the next gen, or is there a next gen coming after you? What are your thoughts, and how do different generations kind of view insurance?
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. It really depends on who you're speaking to, on who that next generation is. So, what I've experienced with clients and advisors is that when we're speaking, especially in the sense of families, dealing with those high net worth families, the next generation is such a fluid scale. We deal with some family businesses who might have the founder owner who's in their upper 70s, and their next generation is their mid 50s, child who's going to take over. For me, I look at the next generation as these, younger kids who are coming up, into
That's
college,
so funny that you say younger kids, but you go right on ahead.
geniuses that are coming up and just are looking to make an entrance and they want to be a part of the conversation.
If I could just kind of add to that, perspective has a lot to do with it. So you give someone in my position, with the years of experience, especially when I am working with the younger generations, I find that they may not be ready to step into their parents' shoes yet, I should say. They definitely have to be taken seriously. They have to be given the same respect that their parents are given.
Quick question. So I was just having conversations earlier this week about collecting, and one of the things that we were talking about was, the different generations of the passion assets is what we call them. Do you all see that those are different conversations that you're having depending on which generation that you're speaking to and what they are collecting? Because we kind of have to stay up on that, right? We have to keep in touch with what is trending.
So the high-end bag collecting is something that we're seeing really come up. Another thing that I've seen is sneakers. Sneakers are a really unique collection to have and are extremely valuable. A couple months ago, a pair of Air One Jordan prototypes went for just under $400,000 at auction. I think they tripled it what they were anticipated to go for. And they're never going to be on somebody's feet. They're arguably a piece of art, right? But that's going to mean more to one person than the other, right? And I think there is some generational interest there, right? A pair of Jordans, are going to mean something more to a younger generation than someone's like, okay, I put my sneakers on to go for a walk and then I take them off. So I think that's interesting as well.
It definitely speaks to, there's no question that what the parents' passion was is not necessarily going to be the kids or the grandkids' passion. And yeah, it's something we have to remain on our toes and be cognizant of it, and then just have the appropriate kind of advice, if it comes up. The good news is the insurance companies have kind of all also pivoted and are open to a lot more of these exotic classes of collectibles.
So, Emily, what we kind of talked a little bit about, collections and liability, but what do you think are some of the risks that the next gens aren't considering that probably they should consider?
Absolutely. I think, that the idea around visibility is huge and something that we're navigating in today's world that we necessarily have not navigated before. You have people who share their life on social media, whether it be in a professional manner or just, casually to their friend. Um, but they're uploading pictures of the inside of their house. They're walking and talking with their phone like this, and you see the background of everything behind them. So we're giving so much access to ourselves that we need to consider the risk associated with
I remember back in the day when actually MTV Cribs started. So now it's like gone viral with all this TikTok and all this other stuff of everyone doing it now. But back in the day, they were showing us their most intimate parts of their houses and all of their cars at the end. And now that's a huge exposure for these people, right? So I think to your point, I think that's very important that people need to realize not only for, the liability portion of who you are and what you have, but now they act for a lawsuit, but now they actually know what you have as well. So how do you think that the different generations actually think about, let's say, liability coverage? That's a big thing that no matter how many assets you have, somebody that is of significant wealth needs the liability coverage. How do you work with them on getting that type of coverage?
I think some of the conversations that I have with, say, G1 and G2 is allowing them also to understand their visibility. They might say, well, I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on X, right? But if you're tied to a family business or you sit on a board and someone throws your name into Google and they see all that, that little fender bender turns into something much larger. And getting them to understand that online presence, whether it's intentional or not, you have it, right? And that presence plays into your liability risks.
What do you think that they need to be thinking about, or how do we get them to start preparing for the future?
Being able to give them the education because they want to be empowered to make those decisions. They want to understand what their coverage actually covers. What does sewer backup mean? And what's the difference from flood to you versus flood to an insurance carrier?
As things change in their lives, they're not always conscious of what they should be sharing, let's say, with someone like us. I'm just thinking the cycle of one of these clients, usually you start them off when they just first time moving out of the house or going to college, and you get them a small renter's policy. And now, fast forward, a few years pass, there's hardly any communication, and suddenly they're getting married, there's an engagement ring, and oh yeah, there may be a condominium in Brooklyn for $7 million. These are true stories. So point is, it's because of the constant kind of connection and having that, open dialogue and being there for them just to answer the most mundane of questions. They know who to reach out to when there's a major change in their life that is going to impact their need for insurance.
I think, I've said this multiple times, and I know I've probably said it to both of you, if not one of you, is 80% of our job is education, right? If we can educate people about what they have and what they don't have, then, we can definitely explain to them and help them cover the risks and the exposures, right? Of what happens to those sneakers when, there's a fire, or what happens when those sneakers, when, somebody wears them and now they're all scuffed up and they're not worth $400,000 anymore, right? Or, different exposures that happen. And so I think that if we can speak to them about the different types of risks and what happens and what could potentially happen, then I think it's really important. In that way, they can understand what they have on the line, really. And, if we can give them examples about the what ifs, it's always a good way to educate them. It's always a good way to kind of, get their attention on what really is important in their life. And if those sneakers are really important and all of a sudden their housekeeper takes them and sells them on eBay or something, then, there's a theft claim right there. Well, I'm going to wrap it up, but I just want to thank you guys both for joining me today. Again, I think we have like 3 different perspectives here, right? And 3 different ways of thinking about it, but I think we're all on the same page. Maybe we might be in a different chapter, but we're on the same page. So I want to thank you guys for joining me, and until next time.